You know, when you think about the cost of seafood, your mind probably goes to the price per pound, right? But what if the real cost, the hidden cost, isn't in dollars, but in human lives? We're going to pull back the curtain on the global fishing industry and expose a crisis of forced labor that's happening right now out on the open ocean. So let's start with a number. The International Labor Organization estimates that at least 128,000 fishers are trapped in forced labor. Now think about that. That's the official number. That's just what we can actually prove. It's a huge, staggering figure. And honestly, it's just the tip of the iceberg. And that's what makes this whole thing so incredibly difficult to tackle. I mean, this isn't happening down the street. It's happening out in the middle of the ocean, far from land, far from any laws or anyone who can help. It's totally out of sight. And that's why pretty much every expert agrees the real number is way, way higher. This is a crisis that absolutely thrives in the shadows. So this all boils down to two really big questions, right? First off, how does this even happen? How does a fisherman from, say, a small village in Cambodia end up as a slave in the middle of the Indian Ocean? And maybe even more important for us, how does the fish he catches end up on our tables? All right, to get to the bottom of that, we have to start with the people. We need to follow their journey and really understand the twisted, systematic process that takes a hopeful worker and turns them into a captive at sea. So where does this journey begin? Well, it almost always starts in places hit hard by poverty, mostly in Southeast Asia. You've got men from countries like Myanmar, Cambodia, Indonesia. They're just looking for a chance, a way to support their families. And that desperation, that hope for a better life, is exactly what makes them a perfect target for traffickers. And it's not random. It's a calculated trap, a pipeline with 3 distinct steps. Step 1, a broker shows up with an amazing offer, a great job in a factory, maybe construction with fantastic pay. It sounds too good to be true because it is. Step 2, debt. Suddenly there are all these insane fees for the travel, for the paperwork, creating a debt so big there's just no way to repay it. And then step 3, isolation. The workers put on a fishing boat, not a bus to a factory. Their passport is taken. And just like that, they're trapped, thousands of miles from home, sometimes for years. That factory job, it never existed. The boat was always the real destination. And life on that boat? Well, it's an absolute nightmare. We're talking about working 18, 20, even 22 hours a day. You get barely enough food or clean water to survive. Any wages you were promised, forget it, they're stolen. Violence is just part of the daily routine. Beatings, torture. People have been murdered out there. And with your passport gone and no way to call for help, there is literally no escape. Okay, so the story doesn't end on that horrific boat, right? Because all that fish they're catching has to go somewhere. And that's where it enters this massive, tangled global supply chain, a system that is incredibly, almost deliberately hard to trace. Now, investigators have managed to pinpoint some of the biggest hotspots for this kind of abuse. For years, we've known about major problems in the Thai fishing fleets. They supply a huge chunk of the world's seafood. And then you have the massive distant water fleets from places like China and Taiwan. These ships operate so far from shore in international waters that they're basically a world unto themselves, and a place where this exploitation is just rampant. And here's where it gets really jarring. You look at the package in the supermarket and you see these nice, reassuring labels, right? Wild caught, sustainably sourced, fresh from the ocean. It all sounds so wholesome. But behind that label, the reality can be, well, forced labor, stolen wages, illegal fishing, and just terrible human rights abuses. The words in the package are a complete fantasy that masks the real human cost. So why should you, especially if you're in the US, really care about this? Well, get this. Over 80% of the seafood eaten in the US is imported. That is a colossal amount of fish coming in through countless different channels, making it almost impossible to know for sure where it came from, and more importantly, who caught it. And look, don't make the mistake of thinking this is some distant, faraway problem. It's not. Investigations have tracked this tainted seafood right into the mainstream American supply chain. We're talking about the shelves of major supermarkets, the kitchens of popular restaurants, and even places we'd never suspect, like US military bases and public school cafeterias. But, and this is a really important but, this story is not all darkness. There is hope. There's an incredible coalition of people and organizations fighting back, and they're getting really smart and innovative about it. They're tackling this crisis from every possible angle, and that fight for change is happening right now. And you know what? They have massive public support on their side. A recent poll from the group Oceana found that 91% of US voters agree that seafood caught with forced labor should not be sold here. Period. I mean, getting 91% of people to agree on anything is incredible. That creates a really powerful mandate for change. The really cool part is how they're doing it. It's not just one group, it's a genuine alliance. You've got amazing seafarer welfare groups like Stella Maris right there in the ports, helping workers who've just been rescued. You've got tech wizards at Global Fishing Watch using satellite data to track ships that are acting suspiciously. You've got environmental groups digging in and doing tough investigations. And you have organizations focused on giving workers the tools they need to fight back themselves. Let me give you a concrete example. There's this app called Golden Dreams, made by the Asara Institute. It's brilliant. It's a smartphone app that gives migrant workers a secure, private hotline in their own language, where they can report abuse, check on their rights, and ask for help. It's literally a lifeline they can carry in their pocket. And then there's the government side of things. At the policy level, programs like the U.S. Seafood Import Monitoring Program, or SIMP, are a huge step. What it does is force companies to trace certain types of seafood, the ones most at risk for this stuff, all the way from the boat to the border. The whole goal is to shine a light into that murky supply chain and make it way harder for the bad stuff to get in.
And that brings us right back to the beginning. We've followed this journey all the way from a small village, across the ocean on a slave ship, and into the supermarket freezer aisle. We've seen the absolute brutality of it, but we've also seen the inspiring fight for change. So I guess the only question left is for you, for all of us. The next time you're about to buy some fish, are you going to stop and ask yourself, what did this really cost?